Okay, and welcome everyone. Today we've got with us Kerri-Ann Baxter. Kerri-Ann is a midwife from Wodonga area, so Albury, Wodonga. And Kerri-Ann's been a midwife for 21 years. 21 years, which is awesome. So we've been talking about midwifery continuity of care and the different kind of models that you might find out in your areas. And Albury, Wodonga's rural, you would say, Kerri-Ann? Yeah. And so, I'm just going to hand over, but you know, I talk about midwifery continuity of care all the time, and it's not always available, but there are options in how we get around that and so I just want Kerri-Ann to talk about what they've set up at Wodonga Hospital and what the outcomes are compared to not having that continuity model. So handing over to you.
Cool. Okay, so lucky enough to have a chat with Emma today and just talk about what we've set up at Wodonga Hospital. So I've been at Wodonga now for just coming on 17 years, and I started originally in the midwife care program where it was just a really, really broad way of providing antenatal care to women in the community, but it had no continuity concept around it at that time. And so it was only over the last several years that we decided that all the research that you have read and everything that's been examined shows that much better outcomes for women and their families when they have a continuity of care model. And not just that, but how they then enter into parenthood and their relationship with their families and their partners and their babies. So we weren't able to set up a caseload model just yet, and that's certainly something that could happen in the future, and it certainly works so well in so many other places. But what we decided to do at Wodonga was to set up a team model. So we now currently work with three teams, and we work with midwife care 6 days a week, and we take about 30 women a month onto our program. So we try to get them as early as 12 weeks if we can, and I guess the issue is trying to tap into those women and what pathways we could use to say, you know, when you're early pregnant, contact us so that we can tell you what your options are. And so the best thing that you can do is just call the hospital and say, what are my options for pregnancy care? And they will give you all that information, including our program with midwife care. The other bonus is it's completely free. So you come to us, and there is some collaboration with an obstetric doctor in the local area. So you do have to find an obstetric doctor, and that is just simply so if you need to touch base with them at some point in the pregnancy, and we have a requirement that you touch base at 36 weeks. And again at 41 weeks if you haven't given birth. But the rest of your care is provided by us. And when you do go back and see those doctors, it's funded by us at the hospital as well. So people, well, that's not the only appeal for people, and particularly in this time, you know, financially, it is a draw card for some people to do it that way. The bonus is you get to meet one of 6 or 7 midwives in a team, and we try to work on a rostering system so that one of us in the team is rostered on for every shift of every day, 7 days a week. Well, it doesn't work perfectly. On a little audit I did, we have about an 85% contact rate with our women in labour, and if we don't see them in labour, we will see them at some point of their time in hospital. And they love it. You know, we call them, we've got a lily pilly, a ruby and an emerald team, and women just love that they come in and they're in a particular folder that identifies that they're in that team. So we get 30 minutes for each appointment, so you get lots of time for education, you get lots of time to listen to your baby and talk about what's happening in your life. And you know, and I know with COVID it's a bit tricky, but usually we involve the whole family, so kids will come into the clinic appointments. And so it works really, really well. In terms of outcome, I mean, we have women just coming into our team, you know, 2 years later when they're pregnant again, and then 2 years later. And I had a girl that's been in my team 3 times now. Yeah. She said, I'll be back again and come back into the team. So it's really lovely to get that continuity. And sometimes you see them and you go, gosh, I haven't seen you for a while. And she's like, that was last pregnancy. But you remember them. And it's kind of almost sad when they're not having babies anymore, because that's the way that you see these women. So
we were talking before we started recording about how when mums first get pregnant, that they often don't know what their options are, and they've probably never heard of midwifery continuity of care if they're first time pregnant. And that what most mums would do when they're pregnant is go and see their GP to just say, well, I'm pregnant, and, you know, get it confirmed and all that kind of stuff. And then generally they'll get a referral to find out about their birth options from their GP, or they'll go straight to an OB.
Yeah.
But ideally, you know, what we want to do is get the information out there that you do have options to do midwifery-led care, and that the research tells us that you get the best options for mums and babies by doing that midwife-led care, and about how do mums find their options in their area for that. Like, is it Googling? Do they ring them?
Yeah, so they can go to the Albury-Wodonga website, and there is a midwife care section that they can go there. But again, how do you know to go there?
What if they're from a different area though? Because like some of the mums watching this would be from all over Australia. So would they be able to Google midwifery care in my area, or would they be best to do private midwifery in my area? Like,
so you could do pregnancy care Albury-Wodonga. That would probably take you on a pathway to show you some of the options, like the private practicing midwives in the area, as well as it will probably come up with GP midwife care clinics. But I think for us, the main thing that you could do is just ring the hospital maternity unit
and talk to the midwives.
Yeah, because we have a ward clerk that works on our midwife care, the side that books women into the hospital and gets all their information, and they have a pathway for these women, but they don't give it to these women until these women touch base.
Yeah.
So once those women have made contact, then those ward clerks will say, right, we're going to send you out all the models of care that are in this area, and then you can make a choice and call us back, and we'll book you into the hospital and screen you for midwife care. I guess one of the tricky things for us and for women, really unfortunately in the area, is that our midwife care program is for low risk women.
Yeah.
And that really then excludes a lot of women that have, you know, some pre-existing conditions, or may have had some kind of event in their previous pregnancy, or maybe they're obese, and that cuts them off from our program.
There's a lot of criteria now these days, isn't there, for getting into the risk. I posted an article in the First 1000 Days group the other day about a woman, and she was a midwife, I believe, and she had twins. So, but it was her second, and she'd had, I think, a natural birth, or maybe she wanted to have a VBAC. But anyway, it was twins, and automatically she went into high risk. And then she was like, oh, my home birth is out of the question. But then she actually researched it, and her risk went from 1% to 2% or something like that. You know, so she decided, well, I'm going to choose that I'm okay with that risk, and still went ahead with her home birth, and it was all great. It was a really good outcome. But most mums wouldn't know that, would they?
No. And you know, years and years ago, they excluded VBACs, so women that had had a previous Caesar, from coming onto midwife care because they deemed them high risk. But what we discovered is they fall into a category called a B category, and a B category means you need to have a consultation with the doctor, but we still want to keep them. We want to keep our diabetics as well.
So they can go and see an OB and go, no, it's all okay.
Yes.
Midwives, you can do feedback.
Yeah. And what we discovered was our outcomes for positive birth outcomes were so significantly better, because these women felt empowered and supported, and they didn't feel like they were put into this category that meant that they had this sense of nervousness because I'm high risk, and what if I don't get what I want, and they would often find themselves a little bit skewed in their decision making. Whereas I say, gosh, you know, those women that are really wanting a VBAC, they need that consistent advice and that you can do this kind of attitude. And then if it doesn't work out as a vaginal birth, they are so much less likely to feel disappointed with their birth outcome, because they felt like they had choices, and they felt like they had support.
Yeah.
And I guess
I did an interview with Hazel Keedle, and we talked about this, you know, do you know Hazel, the VBAC researcher? We talked about it for a whole hour, like with all her findings and stuff like that as well, you know, like about that support and all, you know, changing outcomes and, you know, improving outcomes and stuff. So to know that mums have got a choice is the most empowering thing, I think, and it's up to them to choose. And then even if there is potential risks, that they can then, you know, find out more information from a health professional that could support them, you know, and even if they don't, if they get one answer from someone, you could potentially ask someone else, you know, because quite often, like stories about like VBACs, for example, you know, when a mum going into a a doctor's appointment and saying, I want to have which is a vaginal birth after C-section, if anyone's watching and hasn't worked it out by this stage, no, we won't support you, like just a flat out no. Whereas if they go to someone else, that other person might say yes. So that you can definitely shop around for your carer to get the kind of support you need. Yeah,
absolutely. And you do hear women in the community saying, if I wanted this choice, who would it be best to see? And there's a couple of private practicing midwives in the community, and they will take with good collaboration, they will take women with different risks. And there's definitely midwife care that works out of the GP clinics, 3 or 4 GP clinics locally, that runs very much like our midwife care clinic, but they work with the doctors. So they will take higher risk women in, and sometimes we will refer our women to there because they fall outside of our scope of practice and our capacity, because we're so independent at the hospital, that we will send them there, and we know that they're still going to get midwife care, but they're going to have that doctor that they can touch base with a little bit more frequently, that has really good continuity with them through that pregnancy and whatever their risk factor is. So sometimes that works absolutely perfectly. And again, we will tell women that if we screen them for our midwife care program and say, look, really unfortunately, you're not going to meet the criteria because we follow the national guidelines for consultation and referral, and that's right across the board. That if they don't meet that criteria, it's not lost. Like, there's still a pathway for you, and it's a really positive pathway that you can go on.
And it's about being empowered, isn't it, all along the way, and having that support, and that even if it isn't your exact outcome that you wanted, as long as you're making the choices and feeling supported along the way, we know that's having the biggest impact on the actual birth experience and then mothering and parenting experience.
And then a big emphasis is on childbirth education. This is where you're going to be empowered. Knowledge is power, and if we can inspire confidence in couples by providing them with good quality childbirth education, then they know the questions to ask.
Yes, exactly.
I say you don't walk into a doctor's appointment to be told what to do. You're walking in and you're a team, and this is your birth. And I say to women, I can't even remember how many hundreds of births that I've been at, but at the end of the day, I might be at 10 births in a week, sometimes more, sometimes less. But I'm not going to remember every portion of every birth that I'm at, as much as I love my job. But they will remember every part of their labour and birth. And so, while you wouldn't let someone just build your house and plan your holiday and plan your wedding, why do we walk in and feel like we are, either intimidated or we feel like we don't have a voice? They feel like they don't have a voice if they don't have the knowledge. And with knowledge comes that confidence to be able to just ask the questions. And people say, well, I don't want to be obstructive. I'm like, you're not being obstructive. You're just asking the question.
And
so
you're
that
allowed
you
to
can
ask
make good informed choices.
And it should be answered in an empowered way, not a dismissive way as well. And that's why it's important. So you also do this as a side business, as a private business. You do the antenatal and postnatal care?
So I do. So I run a business called Birth and Babes, and I have done that for the last 14 years. And I'm a calm birth educator, so I teach, relaxation strategies and stress reduction and breathing, and in addition to all the preparation for every possibility for childbirth. I don't do postnatal care, but I do a lot of postnatal debriefs, and so I do say to people when they make contact with me for a class that that's not where our relationship ends, that they've got access to me right through to when they birth, via email, phone, if they've got any questions and beyond. So if they want to discuss their birth experience after birth, that's all part of what I offer. It's just, can't say, well, I've prepared you for this, off you go. Everyone's birth is going to be that little bit different. And sometimes they're just emailing me to say, feel amazing,
Cool.
But if they do need to talk about it, sometimes just talking about it pulls it apart for them, and they can start to understand that a little bit better and feel better. I had a girl that said to me the other day, she had a birth and she had a forceps and she had an epidural right at the very end, and she said to me, I didn't get my birth preferences. And I said, let's have a look at your birth preferences. And she had 11 points on a piece of paper. And we went through them, and I said, there's 9 points on there that you got. and there's 2 points that you didn't, but that was kind of necessary right at the end. But look at what you did get. And with 8 minutes delayed cord clamping, you know, all these things and strategies she'd use to the labour. And it was only after we kind of sat down and talked about it, she was like, yeah, okay. Instead of focusing on those 2 negatives that she didn't want, she was actually able to see that she got those 9 points that meant something to her, which I wonder if she hadn't have actually articulated that and put that down, would she have just focused on those 2 negatives?
Probably. And can you imagine the spiral that may have happened for her if she wasn't able to reframe her birth experience from a disempowered I failed to a, oh my God, look
what I did.
So it's so valuable, isn't it? Like, it's just having that person you can trust and talk to and, you know, bounce stuff off. And that's absolutely something I really recommend as well. So that's a great story to demonstrate that.
Definitely. And I also feel like with midwife care and having any kind of continuity model where you know that care provider or you've touched base with them, you have already broken down the barriers of that rapport. So you don't need to think, you know, is she going to respect me or is she going to respect my wishes? We've already been down that pathway. You know, when you see someone walk in the door and you go, hey, and they look at you like, hey, and you just see that whole, oh, thank goodness that's someone that I know.
They trust you, and that's one of the big keys, isn't it? Is that trust in your provider. I do have a quick question for you. So I guess over your career, you would have seen, you know, the midwife profession and the models of care change. Do you see this continuity of care model becoming more available in the future across Australia for our mums? Like, I know that from going to the conferences and things like that, that midwives are fighting for this, trying to get it out there. Sorry, we're frozen. Okay, so we're back. We got a bit of a tech glitch, but we're back. And so I'm going to repeat my question that I have for Kerri-Ann. It was about from being a midwife over this time, you would have seen the models of care change. And I've certainly seen at conferences, you know, the professional bodies fighting for this continuity of care models and getting it out to become more available for mums. Do you see that happening? I know that you were a big leader in setting up this in your hospital, and we've got other, you know, advocates out there fighting for this across Australia.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And oh man, I can't even begin to tell you where that started 21 years ago in terms of what I witnessed with childbirth now. I think a few years ago there was a towards normal birth policy that came out, and that was a really great lead into women-centered care choices for women, because certainly 21 years ago, even 18, 15 years ago, the choices were really starkly different. And just the environment that women birth in these days in a hospital, and something that I try to say to women is, don't be afraid to come to hospital. Don't be afraid to come into an environment, because often our belief systems around childbirth are very skewed about the environment that you come into, because that's how we see it on television, or it's how we've heard our mothers speak of childbirth. But if I've seen such a dramatic change in 21 years, most women giving birth have got mothers that birthed greater than 21 years ago. So the stories that they're being told, and I want to tell women that if you come in and you're prepared, there is so much that you can have these days in childbirth, which is wonderful. But I guess the problem that came up, you know, and it's been around for a long time, but it's way there, is this we can interfere. And it's about using that amazing technology. You know, I say to women, we're birthing in one of the safest times in the world, in one of the best countries in the world, with the most amazing technology. You just don't always have to use it.
Yeah, exactly. That modern obstetrics, it saves lives, and there would, you know, it's amazing, and we're so lucky we've got access to that. But it's using it at the right time.
When do we tap into that, and when do we go, you know what, this is just so normal, and we can leave it alone. And I find, you know, sometimes working in a hospital, everyone kind of gets tarred with the same brush, that there's 3 inductions over there, and there's 3 epidurals going on in the other room, and there's this beautiful woman having this normal spontaneous labour, but she almost gets caught up in the whole, you know, the anaesthetist is there to do an epidural. Does she need one as well while he's here?
Yeah.
You know, do we need to break her waters? Because we can.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes forcing them to step back and go, you know what, she's okay.
Yeah.
And we haven't started any kind of process with her yet. She is just normal. Why don't we just let her be normal until she's not? Instead of thinking it's not normal and then someone surprises us. I kind of go, you know what, let's just go with this 300,000 women birthing babies every single day in the world. It would have to be a fairly significant design fault for us to get it so drastically wrong. So why don't we look at this as normal? And then,
because there's such a wide variety of what normal is, that it's, you know, that we're trying to make everyone fit into this same kind of structure system. Labours can be anywhere from a couple of hours to 40 hours, or safe labour, safe normal physiological labour. So you can understand how it is hard to fit it into our current models, but that's why we are now trying to build different ones that we can actually support that mother-centred care and woman-centred care. And it's not just about getting the baby out alive, it's about everyone having a good experience and being empowered.
And also that structured process of labour that, you know, you need to dilate at this certain rate, but actually if you're well and everything's well and your baby's well and you're coping, it doesn't actually have to be structured. And one thing that I've learned over this whole time is the more I do this job, the less I feel like I know, because women are so bizarrely unique. And we sit back on a regular basis and go, wow, how amazing was that? Or wow, I didn't expect that to happen. And yet we don't go, well, that could be amazing, and that she might do something really unusual and that might be great. We always kind of erring on the, but what if she doesn't?
You're not doing this yet. You're not, it's too long. Maybe, you know, you're not quite fitting into our mostly normal categories. So you're and unless you've got that strong advocate either in you or for you, you can get sort of put down those things. Do you see women coming in with that fear already present? Because it's the fear of birth. I did a post about the other day. The fear of birth is at an all-time high, and there's lots of reasons for that, I think. But you know, once fear's there, then that really does impact outcomes as well, because it's going to impact the onset of labour and all the normal cascade of hormones and all that kind of stuff. Do you see that as a common thing?
Absolutely. I can't even begin. I say this so many times, I reckon I could write a book on what happens to women psychologically when they either enter the birth space and it's not what they expected, or they're petrified of something, or they'll be halfway through a labour and it stalls and you start wondering what just went on, what's going on in her head, what just happened, did someone just turn the lights on, maybe she's had previous trauma in a hospital before. That whole fight and flight response that kicks in when they step in the doors to the hospital. I say this to women, you know, what is your thought when you think about a hospital? And it's always associated with injury, pain, dying, death, right? Visiting someone who's injured, in pain, dying. And then I say, what comes to mind when you think about labour? And they'll say pain, horrific, something to be endured. And I say, what do you think about when you think about contraction? And they say pain, and you know, how hard is it going to be? And then I say, and what do we think when we think about pain? What do we need to do with that? And they'll say, you need to fix it. So they are so up against it before they even get in to have this baby. They might understand that maternity and a hospital is a safe place to be to have a baby for the most part. But what they don't get is that all these preconceived ideas and thoughts and belief systems that have stemmed right from when they were really young come into play just by walking in the door and smelling that smell and seeing what they perceive to be a clinical environment. And when that fight and flight response kicks in, it activates that sympathetic nervous system, which sends blood supply elsewhere, inhibits the opening of the cervix, and disrupts those amazing hormones, and disrupts the contractions and the productivity of the contractions. When they understand that, when they understand, I can identify what has just happened, and you give them tools and strategies. It's not about saying this won't happen. It's about saying, look, if this does happen, you now know what's going on, and these are the tools that you can work with to make this settle down that nervous system, reactivate that parasympathetic nervous system, which is that you know, feelings of safety and calm and relaxation and stress reduction and privacy. Then you can get back into it and have your baby.
I've talked about that a lot through the thing about how, you know, like in nature, if we don't feel safe to give birth, we won't. you know, like, and we're still essentially fancy apes. We still have the same wiring in the same, you know, fight or flight stress responses. So if we don't feel safe and we feel in danger, we're going to shut that process down.
But they don't know that they do that.
No.
They don't understand.
Yeah.
They're just like, why do my pains feel stronger? Or why have I gone out of labour? Or, you know, like, why is my heart racing?
And then that's just a vicious cycle, because once that starts, that's going to trigger more fear and more unknowns, but not if they're prepared, right? So this is the whole about doing the antenatal classes and the calm birthing, and there's lots of different tools,
or continuity, or whatever it is that helps them. It's about, what have they done before they walk in the door? Who do they know? What preparation have they had? And the thing about any kind of continuity model is they get great education. They might not get comprehensive education, but they get great education. So they get that constantly reiterated to them. And, you know, I talk about your big black wall being your subconscious mind. And when you start getting new information, you start putting new information into your subconscious mind, that becomes, you know, something that you can draw upon, as opposed to drawing on all the negative. And
not even realizing that you're drawing on those past experiences, or those associations with hospital and all that stuff you talked about before. So it's like shifting that mindset into a prepared, and having tools to be able to manage that nervous system response and stress response, and allow that natural physiological process of getting the baby out, which is what should happen, or, you know, ideally happen, but, you know.
And even it was really interesting, 2 days ago we had a midwife care girl came in to give birth, and we knew she was on her way in, and we were a bit quiet in birth suite, so I said to the girls that I was on with, let's just make this room beautiful. So we all got in there with candles, and we had the aromatherapy on, the music was already on, and the mat was on the floor, and when they walked in, he burst into tears. And he just said, I'm so overwhelmed. This is like our perfect environment. And I, you know, that whole knowing those people just makes you just want to go that extra step, you know? I don't know.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's so amazing. Have you got anything else you wanted to add before we wrap it up? I mean, I could talk for hours. Everyone I interview, we all go way over time, because normally I'm like, I should keep it short, so I know everyone's busy and they're going to watch, but it's, you know, we need to get this information out there to all the people. So I really appreciate your time and help explain these sort of models of care, so that mums, you know, can make informed choices. So sorry, you go.
No, I was just going to say, just ring the hospital in your area, because the hospital is absolutely going to know what your care are around that area.
Yeah, cool. And both of our, you know, Instagrams and Facebooks and all of those kind of things have got lots of resources, and, you know, all through the program, and you know, there's some awesome podcasts around and all of those kind of things that we can use as tools as well. But definitely massive fan of that continuity of care with a midwife, because I know how good it is, and that was my experience, and it was incredible. So thank you so much for your time, and people can get in touch with you and follow you on social media and all those things as well. Thanks, Kerri.
And you can always email me about anything. I'm always happy to respond.
Thank you.